Over the last 5 months, there have been many questions about who AIA's new CEO is and what our priorities are. Our next segment will answer those questions and more. AIA CEO Lakisha Woods will join us for what will be a topical and engaging conversation with Julia Gamolina. Now, Julia is founder and editor-in-chief of Madam Architect, which has, so far, told the stories of more than 300 women who advance the practice of architecture. Julia stays grounded in professional practice as an associate principal and business development director at AIA. She's also a visiting assistant professor at Pratt Institute, where she teaches a graduate-level professional practice seminar. So, please give a warm welcome to Julia Gamolina, and welcome back to the stage, Lakisha Woods.
Incredible. It's incredible to be up here with you, Lakisha, but what's even more incredible is to see this room filled with so many people. We're finally together, and what's especially exciting for me is that we're together for this new chapter. The time that we all reconvene is a new chapter for the AIA. So are you ready to get started?
I am ready.
Great. So Lakisha, this is not your first time in the C-suite. This is your third time. However, I feel like this moment is really a unique moment to be a leader. There's a lot of discussion about leadership, there's a lot of emphasis on it. And in this time of change and opportunity, how do you see your role for the AIA and thus for the profession?
Well, thank you for the question, and thanks for being here, and to everyone here today. I have to say that it is the best part about starting a new role is the opportunity to listen. And I find it to be extremely important, especially for any CEO stepping into a new organization, to understand what's on the mind of the staff, the members, your volunteer leaders, your sponsors, all of your partners within this space. And so that has been something that is always the critical first step for me in any role that I've been in, but especially here at AIA. It has been so I tell people all the time, I'm drinking from the fire hose because I am 5 months in, but I turn the fire hose on myself so I've got no one to complain to but myself. And I have learned so much. And in answering and asking the questions about what does AIA do really well and what is something that you've always wanted us to change. And my favorite question has been, why did you become a member? Because I know the story that people tell me is everyone's going to say they're a member so they can have those 3 letters after their name. But what I found really fascinating with all the architects I've had the opportunity to speak with, that was never the answer. There's always a great story behind why they wanted to be connected to this organization. And so I think it's so important to listen to what people are saying, what they need, what's a priority, because, I mean, any organization, especially in the association space, we can find ourselves in a moment where we're trying to be all things to all people, and we can't be all things. So the number one question I ask is, if you were me and you're CEO, what would you make your number one priority this year? So all of you that are out there and you're thinking of wanting to share some information with me, I definitely want to hear that answer from you. Because that, and finding the consistency around where people think our number one priority is, that's where we're going to find the greatest opportunity for change and advancement and in moving forward. And for me, I've always been seen as a change agent. I went to the Center for Creative Leadership, and they do those 360 evaluations, and I've found myself not on the spectrum of no change and not on the spectrum of I want to change every single thing, but I'm right there in the middle. And I think that that's been a benefit for me because I've been able to listen to those and help them, get on the bus and evaluate what their needs are so we can make those changes. But a change agent is required if we're trying to make those steps to move the organization forward that everyone has been sharing with me.
Wonderful. Well, the two of us listen a lot, ask a lot of questions. So based on the interviews you've done with members in terms of why they choose to be members, what has surprised you the most these last 5 months?
Well, what surprised me is, well, one, I was always impressed by AIA. I mean, the stature, the members themselves, the profession, what you do. I mean, everybody wants to change the world. It's amazing. And one of the questions I kind of asked myself was, well, this is a big organization. They've been doing amazing things for 165 years. Can I really add value? And it was wonderful to step into the role, to have time to speak with our leaders and our members and our staff, and find that, yes, I definitely have an opportunity to leave my mark because our leadership has created a new strategic plan. And what they want to see to move forward, I think my background and as an association management professional properly aligns with what's needed for that next step for AIA. And so I'm thrilled to have had the background that I have and worked with, my first job was working for the National Ready Mix Concrete Association, for those of you who don't know. So I get mad when the newscasters say cement, and I'm like, it's concrete. But then also I went from there to the Associated General Contractors of America, and then of course to the National Association of Home Builders, where I was for many years. And then when I went to NIBS, it was interesting, as the National Institute of Building Sciences, we represented all of the various stakeholders in the built environment. And Congress created that organization to break down the silos because they knew that our industry was siloed. But also, my former bosses were now my members, so that was a little unusual. But it's, again, having that chance to go from the subcontractor to the general contractor to the home builder. And I always worked with architects and engineers, and throughout that whole process, what we need to do next, the message is still the same, no matter who I'm talking to. Those big key issues that are facing one group are facing all of them. And so I'm excited to be at AIA, where they put in writing what needs to happen next to impact and change this industry and this profession.
Wonderful. One of the things that I'm most excited about, well, many things I'm very excited about having you as CEO, of course, but is that you have worked with so many different professionals in the built environment, and now you're working with us architects. But one thing that's been fascinating is that what you've really focused on is strengthening the bottom lines of the associations that you've led, which I don't think we talk about enough, and I'm really excited that we will, and we're talking about it today. So how are you going to bring that focus to the AIA? And also with that, what does it mean for its members to have that business focus?
Yes, the business focus, it's ingrained in me from my father, who used to come home from work and share these lessons of leadership, which I didn't realize as a child were lessons of leadership. It was just my father talking about work all the time. And he would say, the customer is always right, and you have to focus on what your employees need, and it's about the bottom line. If your company can't be profitable, you can't keep your company in business, and therefore you can't keep your employees employed. And he would give these messages, and I didn't want to hear them. But now I find myself quoting my father all the time, and I recognize that with associations, often they don't necessarily think of themselves as a business, but those times have changed. And so many organizations have recognized how important it is to see the business aspect of what we have to do. In order for us to achieve our mission, we have to keep the lights on. We have to operate as a business. There are so many tools and resources that are created to help associations train their volunteers on how they can be most effective in their role. Train our employees on how they can best lead in their various departments, train them up to be exceptional managers, help them understand how to manage a volunteer leadership team, and get the most out of what is needed in order for you, again, to achieve your mission. And with this organization, focused on the future and focused on how we can change the profession, I think it's important to have someone in a leadership role who knows how to adapt and who's looking at the products and services. You know, I'm listening to these conversations and recognizing, boy, do we, you know, we've had products, we've had services and opportunities. We have this trade show, we have this event, and we've done things a certain way. And so often, and I'm sure none of you have ever heard this, we do it because we've always done it that way. No, nobody said that. And I like to ask the question, but do we still need to continue to do it? Do we need to have this program? Is it helping the greater number of our members? And why? What do you find most valuable? Maybe there's something new that we should create that's gonna help you and your bottom line. And what most people have probably figured out, courtesy of COVID, is that there are a lot of companies out there that are producing services that compete with associations. So if we don't learn how to drive the value of why you should pay your dues and become a member of this organization and see it as the best investment you've ever made, and that why, you know, we want it to be when you get that invoice that you're saying, whew, deal of a century. And if you're not saying that, then we've got some work to do. And I've heard we've got some work to do, so we're gonna get on that, because I think there's so much untapped potential, and there's an opportunity to reevaluate how we do things, what's next, and I'm just, again, listening and making sure that my team has the resources that they need in order to be successful and to produce those tools. So
building on the incredible opportunities ahead, why did you decide to come to the AIA? What was special about the AIA for you personally?
Well, as I mentioned, I've spent my whole career in the built environment and representing organizations in the built environment, but AIA has always been my long-term dream. I just dreamed of one day having the chance to work at AIA, and you were kind enough to give me the opportunity to lead it. And with the board, I'm just so impressed by who they are and the passion and the hours spent. Or Dan, I'm like, Dan, do you work here at AIA? Because this is the 5th hour we've been on various phone calls together. But that dedication and that service is just amazing. And when I saw the strategic plan, and again, the fact that you put those 2 goals in writing, I honestly did not think there would be a day that I saw someone in the built environment put it in writing. I mean, people have talked about it a lot for 20 years. I always walk into the room and I always see that I'm the only person that looks like me in the room. And it happens, and that's fine. But I've also heard people saying for many years, we need to have more diversity in our membership. We need to, and they say it, but I look around this room, I see the future president, I see what you all are doing, and it's exciting. It really is. And I'll tell you what else is exciting. That strategic plan is helping us recruit new employees. They're coming for the same reason. Wow, I saw your strategic plan and I want to be a part of an organization like that, that's focused on climate, that's focused on equity. How can I get involved? And when you have the opportunity to do that, to use it as a resource to recruit, we need the best and brightest. I don't know if you've ever worked in Washington, D.C., but there are about, I don't know, a couple thousand associations that we're competing for talent. So we need to have the best-in-class benefits, the best-in-class resources for our team, but we also need to have a mission that they're excited to be a part of. And what you do inspires our team, and it definitely inspires me.
Wonderful. So we talk a lot about recruitment all across, in academia and professional practice. What about retention? You mentioned benefits and things like this to attract, people to the organizations that, you hope to, but how do we make sure they're there and they're successful and their tenure is long and impactful?
Retention is key, right? Because I know that, for example, AIA's created those guides to equitable practice. And when I was at my previous organization, what we had done is survey work about equity. And it's one thing when you say that you want to recruit more women, more minorities into your company. But if you don't change the culture, then you're not going to be able to retain them. And if you don't allow everyone to feel like they have a voice and that they're valued, I think about when you'll recruit young people onto your team because maybe you need help with social media or something technology related. Whatever it may be, when you bring young people into your office, do you tell them to sit around the room and listen up because your tenure has so much knowledge to share with them? Or do you recognize that their voice can be equally as valuable as your long tenure in your space? Those changes in the culture, that ability to see everyone as a valuable member of the team and make them feel valued, it is extremely important. And when people see that and they know that they have a voice and they can be viewed as someone who can add to what you're doing, what you're representing to the design, then it really, all the surveys, all the information you see often, it doesn't say that people stay in a job because they have the highest pay. I mean, there are probably those jobs. But for the most part, people want to feel like they're making a difference and they want to feel valued. So that's how you retain. And I think what's great about the architecture profession is, again, what you do can change the world. What you do is valued, but you have to make sure that as you're recruiting people in, that you're recognizing the opportunities to maybe make some adjustments to your culture. I just think about I've listened to so many different stories, so I have a lot running in my head, but the process just to become a licensed architect. How is that set up to help all people at all times in their lives? How do we change our workplace culture so that people who are going to have a family, both men or women, or when you're trying to create a family, what does your benefits offer for everyone to have an equitable role in the process of raising that family? And so there's just many steps that we can each take as companies that we as AIA have to assess and make adjustments so that we can show that there's value to retaining our employees on staff.
That's wonderful. And I so appreciate you saying that, everyone has value to add and everyone has a unique combination of experiences. And, we have a next generation column on Madam Architect where we interview students and recent grads for that very reason. And so that it's a very holistic, look at the profession and all working together to move it forward. But you mentioned the strategic plan for the AIA. What do you see as the biggest opportunities for the AIA within that?
Well, we know that, again, the strategic plan is focused on equity and climate action. And I also, I think all of those things, and you heard me say earlier, that if you are working on those two areas, you're going to find yourself recruiting the right people and then having a more innovative team, which will also allow you to be more profitable. And I think about, where AIA's real goal is, and that is being a convener. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to tour the Obama Presidential Center. And thank you, AIA Chicago, for setting that up for us. And to sit there and look at the model in the office, and I saw this expansive, beautiful landscape architecture and again, astonishing building with the detail. And then they showed us, of course, a video profile of all the amazing interiors. And then we got to go to the job site and take a look at, I think, one of the most diverse teams I've ever seen on a job site. And I just thought about the whole process. And I thought to myself, it takes all of the groups, right? It takes all of us, landscape architects, interior designers. It takes everyone, the contractors, working together in order for that dream of your design to become a reality. And so how can we as AIA do more to bring all the groups together to make you feel like there's an opportunity to maybe address some tough issues where we don't necessarily align, but trying to find that middle ground? Because the ability for us to grow and to succeed, it really ties back to that collaboration. And it's just one without the other, one piece of that doesn't work. And we need all of those groups to come together and really unite around how we can utilize all of our skill sets for sustainability, for equity, and again, for our design to truly impact society.
Absolutely. It's going to take a lot of brilliant minds to do everything that we want to do.
So earlier we talked about your business focus, which again, I'm so excited about. So could you share the business case for AIA's emphasis on equity and sustainability and how that affects the bottom line?
I feel like I keep coming back to equity, but I was reading an article in the Washington Post last week, and for those of you outside the DC area, right, our Ways and Means Committee had a hearing, and I noticed one because of my former association had a leader that was being interviewed about, was testifying about making the workplace more welcoming for women. And I said, why? Wait, we need AIA at that table right now talking about what we need to do, because there's a culture change. And again, we talked about the data and how it tells that story. But when you see the data and when we can provide you business cases, how are we at National reaching out to our local and our state components, chapters, whatever we're calling them, and finding out success stories? How are we sharing those success stories? Because we can all learn from each other. And the more we can use our voice at National to pull the stories and bring them up and elevate them, elevate the amazing people within our profession that represent all spectrums of the marketplace, right? We do have diversity within our space, maybe not the largest numbers in each of those areas, but they always say, if you can see it, you can be it. And so how are we pulling up and highlighting all of our female architects, all of our minority architects? How are we telling the stories of companies who are doing an amazing job when it comes to equity in the workplace? What did they do? How did it change and impact their business and their community? And what's next? And so if we can tell those stories, we can learn from each other, because those business cases are really what help you make those adjustments in your company. And that's where I think we have an opportunity. Again, reaching out, I've heard so many wonderful stories and heard about how we've created programs in the past and what we can do next. And so for me, that's where I am focused, and I want to make sure that our team is sharing all the great stories that exist across the country.
Can you share some examples of some of those stories that you've come across in the last 5 months?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, some of the stories are right here that we've been showcasing today with all of our award winners. And that's part of it. And of course, you can't craft these massive films for every single story that's out there. But I was at the US Conference of Mayors 2 weeks ago, and they said that one of the mayors came up after we did the interview with the Houston mayor, Sylvester Turner, and they said, wow, you know what? I put an architect on my city council, and it absolutely changed everything in my community. Best decision I ever made. And I was, where's the camera, video, capture that, right? Nobody wants to hear why we are valuable from us. They need to hear it from your customer. So how do we capture more of those ad hoc clips that people tend to say in the moment? I think it's a great opportunity for us to share. And then again, when they say that, how do we share that through other mayors? Oh, here you go. Let's get that message out about why it's important to get an architect on your city council. Oh, and by the way, here are a list of all the architects in your area that would be happy to join your city council. So it requires us to gather probably a little more information from our members. We need to know, but there's just so many opportunities. And I also had the chance to speak to the Princeton School of Architecture, and those students were amazing. They had a lot to share, including the fact that they said they wanted to be connected. They wanted AIA to connect them to an architect that looked like them wherever they may want to work in the country. So how can you provide that? Like, we're in New Jersey, but we want to work in California or Texas. Can you connect me to an architect that looks like me in Texas so I can learn from them while I'm in school? Getting those stories and those questions and those requests allows us to go back, talk to our technology team, talk to our local community, talk to our chapters and say, how do we develop these resources that are what students are needing so we can keep them through the program, get them into our space, and make sure that they stay in the profession. Because remember, we're losing people to other industries, not just that they just lose interest in architecture. It's how do we keep them and retain them in this profession and not let them escape to somewhere else.
That's wonderful. And that information exchange from practitioners and students is incredible as well. So there's two qualities that you embody as CEO. You're not an architect, of course, but you're also a member of a really vastly underrepresented group within the profession. So how do those qualities, among the many other amazing qualities that you're bringing to this, how will they help you help the profession thrive and evolve in the way that we move forward?
Yes, I'm not an architect. What is great is that as I was asking questions of our leaders, of our members, about what their needs are, what was fascinating is the response was often, wow, no one's ever asked me what I thought we needed. And probably because everybody was an architect and they knew what you needed, right? But everybody needs something different. And so coming into this role, I'm looking for everyone's thoughts and looking at how we can find that bell curve of content, that this is where the majority of people need help, need tools, need resources, and let's focus on those. And being an association management professional has put me in a role where I am also able to make that happen. And I do know that as a minority in this space, it was really interesting after the press release went out, the number of communications I received via email, LinkedIn, from people I don't know all around the world, so excited that I was selected. Really, really excited. And mind you, it wasn't just minorities or women, it was people just of all backgrounds. But it really told me how much people wanted to see change and know that there's an opportunity for anyone to have a leadership role if they bring the talent to the table. And it also speaks volumes about how impressed they are by the decisions that the leadership is ready and willing to make, because not all organizations are really ready to make those decisions. They want to keep with what's safe. They want to keep with what they know or who they know. And AIA said, we're going to find the right person, period. And so I'm excited that I'm here, and I hope you are too.
We are. Right.
So exactly to that, I'd love it if you could share a few words about your leadership philosophy and just what you've learned in the 10 years that you've held and what you're bringing to the AIA.
Absolutely. Well, what we're focused on, of course, is achieving what the organization needs as a professional society, making sure we have the right tools, that we are, and I keep saying tools and resources, but really that's what it is. If you don't have those tangible takeaways, someone said to me, I know I need to figure out how to meet the 2030 challenge, but do you have something that's sort of a step 1, step 2, step 3, because they're not quite sure how to address it within their company. So it makes us go back and ask, what are we doing? And I always say that I have to make sure that my team, that I have the right team, because you have to have the right people in place in order for the boat to move in the right direction, but also we have to give them and equip them with what they need, the ability to make decisions. We have to make some decisions really quickly because we're moving fast. We have to adapt to what's happening in society today. But I also recognize that there will not be a moment where I will make everyone happy. And I have to come to terms with that. I mean, I ask you, has anyone in here made their kids or their spouse or their friends happy 100% of the time?
And at the same time.
Anyone? No? Somebody? Do I get a hand out there? Yeah. It's not an easy thing to do. And so how do we try to keep the majority of our members happy, valued? The fact that our members are so engaged, you're like no other association on the planet. It's the #1 takeaway from the most recent survey said that what associations are challenged with the most is that they cannot get their members to become actively involved. And I live every day what somebody said to me at the beginning. The good news is you have 94,000 passionate professionals that are eager to be here. And the bad news is you have 94,000 passionate professionals that are eager to be here. It's trying to find a place for everyone to get involved and make their mark. And it's amazing that you all want to put something forward and take your time and be engaged. But we want to make sure that we're focusing that energy and those resources on, again, what are those assets and tools we can create that are going to really impact the association profession in the long run. And again, staying focused on what are the pieces we can control. Because I can't control everything, and I like to focus on what I can control. And in that is we want to elevate the profession of architecture. We want the public to know exactly what you do. And to do that, we have to find them where they are. And sometimes that means they're not watching the 3-hour documentary on PBS. So we've got to find them, whether it's, a 60-second video on TikTok. We have to capture your stories in short snippets or in longer ones and share it where we can find your customers. And so I'm focused on that as well, elevating the profession, making sure everybody knows the amazing work that you do. Because if they don't see it, they don't know, and they won't recognize what that value is. So I'm gonna ramble, what am I?
No, this is fantastic. And I'd like to build on this a little bit. 94,000 is not insignificant, and it captures a wide variety, of architects and professionals all over the country. So how do you handle differences of opinions and perspectives?
Well, again, I guess I'll go back to, I like to engage people. I'm a big fan of making sure we survey our members. What do you need? What are you looking for? But then I also like to pause and say, okay, we have all this data. What action are we taking? I said to a former boss years back when he said, I think I'm going to survey the staff and see what they think about X, Y, and Z and what they're doing in leadership. And I said, don't ask the questions unless you're ready to take action on the results. And then there was no survey. But it is, you have to be ready for it. So if we ask you what you need, when those answers come back, we must take time to actually try to provide those solutions. And we can't provide the solutions because there are 5 very loud people who want a certain thing. We have to focus on the solutions that are for the greater good, that affect the larger quantity of the profession. And again, I am always focused on what is going to make our members successful. What is going to make you profitable? The P word. It's not a dirty one. Because if you're not making a profit, then you can't recruit a more talented workforce to come in and continue to grow the profession. I will always say that my success is tied to your success. I'm only going to be successful if your businesses flourish and grow, and that you have teams and that are happy, and that you are receiving resources from us that are adding value to you and your people, and of course, to your bottom line. And so that's where I'm focused as a leader, and getting buy-in and finding out what people need and making changes based on what they need. That's where I am, and that's where I stay focused.
Wonderful. I have one last question for you.
Okay.
So one thing that I've seen already in my tenure in the profession is we've really gone from a focus on a formal practice, kind of an aesthetic practice, to a focus on how buildings perform and performative architecture, especially in terms of climate change. And now we're at a wonderful era where we're really focusing on the social aspect. So within that context, what is it about architecture and architects and everyone that's contributing to making buildings and making our world, what inspires you the most?
Oh boy. Well, I've said often that I'm a military brat, so I moved, I feel like every year or 2 of my life, so I've been everywhere. I've always been fascinated by architecture, the look, the style of buildings. I love traveling around the world to look at all the different types of architecture. And so people will look through photos of my trips, and there's more pictures of buildings than there are of people. But I've just, again, always had that fascination and love. And there's not any one particular type. But I will say I can't pick one. It's like picking your favorite child. I can't. But I've just always loved the built environment. I've always been fascinated by how it all comes together. And to listen to people when they're really passionate about what they do, and especially in this space, you'll get a lot of that. To hear them talk about it, I want to sit back with like popcorn and just listen and say, okay, how can I impact change? What can I do to keep you just as motivated and excited as you are today? And so here I am looking at just those very things, continuing my listening tour to listen and adapt as we can as an organization, and just really excited to be a part of the team.
Well, Lakisha, it's been such a pleasure to be here with you, and such a pleasure to share a conversation with each and every one of you that is here today too. So thank you all so much, and Lakisha, thank you especially.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you so much.